comment. This is an opportunity to ask questions, state your concerns regarding non-public hearing items and issues not on the agenda. We'd ask if anybody comes forward and that they give their name and address, and we'd allow up to 5 minutes for being able to express your concerns or questions. Anyone interested in this evening? Looks like I think they're set up for the projects at hand. So seeing none, we'll move to the first item on the agenda dealing with cases. This is case 20-874. It's a final area site plan review, and it's a public hearing. Pertains to a 132,600 square foot industrial building for Viking products at 3260 Northridge Drive, Northwest, Lot 4 of the Northridge East IPUD. Dave DeYoung, Visser Brothers, and Dale Mansky, Viking Products, are here. And to lead off the discussion, we look to Planning Director Tricia Anderson to introduce the project.
Thanks, Terry. So tonight we have 3260 Northridge Drive, Northwest. This is Lot 4 of the Northridge East Industrial PUD. Was that me making that sound? So tonight the action requested by the Planning Commission is to review the final area site plan, or the FASP, for a 132,600 square foot industrial building with 2,600 square foot of second story office area and related site improvements for Viking products, and to provide an approval with or without conditions, denial or tabling of the request. So we have the address right now is 3384 still, but eventually it has been assigned the address of 3260 Northridge Drive. The lot size is 16.8 acres, and the zoning district is PUD, part of the Northridge East IPUD. Both future land use designations are industrial, and again, this is Lot 4 of the Northridge East IPUD. We have Dave DeYoung, Visser Brothers, on behalf of Viking Products, Representative Dale Mansky. So just a little bit about Viking Products. They provided a really nice detailed narrative for us. And what I've learned is that their world headquarters have been in Walker for over 30 years. And in fact, they're currently located at 3710 Northridge. So they're going to make just a short little jog down the street. And they specialize in manufacturing, and they make some specialized parts for the automotive industry, and occasionally will serve the office furniture and alternative energy industry with their special parts that they manufacture. And so obviously the need for a new building is the result of a lot of growth that the company has had over the last few years, and they've also got some growth projected over the next 10 years. So obviously they need a larger facility, and so the building and site-related improvements is part one of 2 phases for the overall project. So again, just an overview of the Northridge East IPUD. Here's the Amazon site, Lot 8, that you got very familiar with and made some decisions on at your last meeting. And here's our Hendershot extension where it meets up with Northridge Drive. And this Lot 4 is just southwest of that little intersection there, Lot 4. So essentially, here's phase 1 of the site of the project. So they're proposing the parking areas, some truck docks. Oops. Let me go back. They've given us a breakdown of the floor plan, and they are showing some areas for receiving, shipping, small area for assembly. sorting. They also have a covered patio, and then they'll have their office area upstairs. So let me go back here real quick. So this site, being on Northridge Drive and part of this PUD, a lot of the infrastructure is already here. So there's some existing storm, sanitary, and water lines in the road. And so, as Scott and Frank like to say, this is kind of a plug-and-play type situation. I like to say that. So just a few more areas of improvements that they're proposing here. So they are also adding 132 parking spaces and loading and unloading areas for shipping and receiving. And then they are also adding some lighting, landscaping, and stormwater management facilities and some storm infrastructure on the site. So just getting into a couple of highlights from my staff report. They were given sort of a punch list of items that we needed to have corrected after we held a site plan review committee meeting. And the applicant has addressed most of those items. So we have just a couple of minor things that we would like to see revisions on the plan for. And one of them, we spoke about having 2 different phases. The plan that was submitted shows future expansion, but in all the times that we're referencing phase 1 and phase 2, especially when it comes to the landscaping of the project, we are allowing them to install the landscaping during each approval for each phase. So when phase 1 is in the middle of construction, they're ready to start their landscaping, they only have to install landscaping for phase 1. And then when phase 2 is ready to be constructed and applied for site plan approval, then we'll look at landscaping, and then we'll ask that the rest of the landscaping gets installed during that portion of the project. So we just want a little designation of phase 1 and phase 2 on the plan. Another area that we'd like to see some more information is for signage. We know that they're proposing a ground-mounted sign, and it's called out on the plan. We just need to see how far away from the property line it's supposed to be. The ordinance calls for 5 feet. And we also would like to see the details. Because this is a PUD, in some instances, applicants will ask for more signage than what is typically allowed in an industrial district. So the underlying zoning here would be industrial. So if the applicant is not looking to ask for any additional signage, then we would just ask that they submit signage details consistent with what the ordinance allows for industrial prior to the issuance of a building permit. So, as you know, this is part of the Northridge East PUD. The developer is Visser Brothers, and they have entered into a development agreement with the city of Walker for the construction and improvements to the roads and utilities along in Northridge Drive. And so part of that is determining when building permits can get released. And I just wanted to point out that the development agreement allows for one building permit to be issued before all the required improvements are complete. And that building permit has been scooped up by Amazon. So this would be the next one. And I spoke with our assistant city engineer, Travis Mabry, about when the improvements would be complete and where everybody is at with the improvements. And he indicated that the public road acceptance will happen on November 9. And so after that, we can issue the building permits. He said it's not advisable to issue building permits before the city has accepted the public road. So I just wanted to put that out there in the record and make sure that we are acknowledging that. So just a summary of my recommendation and conditions of approval here. The applicant shall revise sheet 2 to include phase 1 and phase 2 notes, as well as a line that separates the two phases prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall revise sheet C4 to replace Norway spruce with blue spruce, and also replace the Bradford pear with an alternative ornamental tree appropriate to Walker's hardiness zone. We're not a huge fan of the Bradford pear. They're actually considered invasive at this point in time. Number 3, the applicant shall provide acceptable signage, dimensional details to be reviewed by staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. 4, the applicant shall revise sheet 2 to include notes referencing the library and page numbers associated with any recorded easements shown on the plan prior to the issuance of a building permit. And this is one of Scott's conditions as well. It shall be acknowledged that the building permit for this project can be issued after the City of Walker's public road acceptance of Northridge Drive. And then the last one, the applicant shall address all the items noted in the city engineer's report dated October 13, 2020. And I have some architectural renderings that Mr. DeYoung asked me to put on in the presentation here. And then I can leave these up when Terry asks for you to come up and speak about the project, but it looks pretty good.
All right, thank you, Tricia. Any comments or questions? I've just got one question. With the phase 1 and phase 2, with the action under consideration tonight, are we looking at approving phase 1 and phase 2 together?
We are looking at just phase 1 because we don't have details except for just future expansion. So we haven't taken any of those parking spaces and included them in any of the parking calculations. We haven't taken those building areas and included them in the overall building areas that we've been discussing. We're just talking about the building, and then when they expand, then we'll go ahead and address all the stormwater, landscaping, lighting, all the other stuff that's going to be on the northern portion of the site.
So that will come back before the planning commission at a later date then?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Thank you, Tricia. Now we turn it over to City Engineer Scott Connors.
Mine's pretty simple here. During site plan review, we had quite a few comments, and they've addressed all those comments. A couple minor exceptions. One is to make sure that that sidewalk on the south side of the building is labeled with a dimension so that we know that it's 7 feet. Pretty typical for us along a building where there's going to be parking up against the sidewalk. And then the next 2 items are really related to Northridge not being fully accepted yet. So we want to make sure that the public right-of-way for Northridge is secured and endorsed before that permits are issued. And then also the private utility easement. And I think part of the reason for bringing this up is just in case there's a property transfer that occurs after this meeting, but before the Northridge stuff is approved, we have to make sure that we don't miss out and all of a sudden we've got a gap in the road or we've got a gap in the easement and all of a sudden Consumers Energy can't run their lines up and down the road because that work hasn't happened yet either. So we need to make sure that those 2 conditions are also added as a condition of approval if you move forward. And that's it.
Any other comments, questions for Scott? I've got one question. It relates to the drive access onto the into the site, particularly the southern entrance of the matrix. How do those, have you looked at it as far as how it's going to match up with the development of the property right across the street, lot 3? I can't recall whether we've seen a plan for that in the past or not.
in the PASP, which Tricia just pulled up, there's one version, but if you look at the sheet that was just before that, there's a dashed driveway across the street that's in a different location. And those two things together go to illustrate the fact that we have no idea where that driveway is going to be. But you kind of take a first one in the door approach to some extent with these planned unit developments. And so whoever comes in across the street, they're going to have to work around these driveway locations. And, a developer in a plat like this understands that, and when they let, somebody come in, if the driveways aren't in a very desirable location, they have to work around that. So I know at the south end here, they had originally proposed having these two driveways right next to each other. And Gary, our DPW director, actually caught that and went back to the ordinance and noted that they couldn't put those together. So they've done some work already on the site to refine the driveways. But in terms of looking at across the street, it's a wild guess at this point. All we have now to look forward to is trying to make sure that we don't have conflicts with what's going to be existing at that time.
Okay, yeah, especially in this case with the, being on the curve in the road, those turning conflicts, we want to make sure that we're taking into account. Okay, thank you.
And these locations are good. They're on the right side of the curve. Across the street, we're probably going to try to push for driveways being pushed north and south quite a bit away from that curve because they'll be on the bad side of the curve, obviously.
Any other comments or questions for Scott? Okay, being none, we'll, an opportunity for the representative for the project to come forward, please, and provide us with a presentation.
Thank you, Terry, Tricia.
You want to turn the mic on?
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Terry and Tricia. I'm Dave DeYoung with Visser Brothers. We're, as Tricia said, the developer and general contractor for Viking. And we're very excited to be part of it. It's another project we've done with Viking. This is actually our third project with them in Walker. And actually Viking's fourth. And Tricia pretty much nailed everything about what we're doing with the building. And in a minute, we'll have Viking come up and talk a little bit about what they do, both in Walker and in their business. And I will address some of the things that were brought up tonight. For example, the phasing. We showed future development just to indicate that we intend at some point that it's possible and that might happen. We currently don't have any plans to develop it. That, like Tricia, like you had mentioned, that would all be done in the future anyway under a whole separate permit, separate approvals. And Scott, according to your letter, I noticed that sidewalk issue that was brought up in our previous meeting, we did address that. In fact, it is shown that way on our plans. It's just not dimensioned. So graphically it's shown, it's actually figured into the design. So we're good there. But we will add that notation to the plans. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Yep. And regarding the easements, we did get clarifications. I think you were included on this, but we did get clarification from consumers that their easement is not exclusive. That was the question that was brought up before, so that's been addressed. And that has been recorded. We'll get that information on the plans. And the private utility easement is actually being worked on as we speak, so we don't anticipate any issues there. We're also on track, as you mentioned, to have the road taken over on the 9th, approved on the 9th, so everything looks good there. As I mentioned, we're very excited to be a part of the project. We're okay with the building permit being released after the road's approved. That's totally reasonable to us and works for us. And if you have any questions for us, we can answer them. Otherwise, at this time, I'd ask to have a representative from Viking come up and just talk a little bit about what you guys do. And
Hello, I'm Doug Hoffman. I'm the CEO of Viking Products. We're very excited about this program. This will be our 4th location in Walker. We've been in Walker now for 30 years. Visser Brothers has been our partner for all 4 buildings that we've been in, and we're delighted to work again with Visser. We started 36 years ago, 2 people. We now have 50 people. We've got a great workforce, and that's why we're here in West Michigan, why we're in Walker. We want a showpiece building. We want a showpiece building that's comfortable for our people. It's a good home for our team, and a building that we're proud of when we bring people from all over the world. We ship parts to China, we ship parts to Korea, we ship parts to Mexico and Canada. And so when we have our customers visit, we want a showpiece facility. And we're growing, we're profitable, and we're good members of the community. We support the city through a number of different initiatives. We're part of the Kids Food Basket here in West Michigan. We're Habitat for Humanity. We're involved with Habitat. We're involved with the West Michigan Trails and Greenways right here in Walker. And so we're growing and pleased to be part of this project. And you did a great job with the presentation on what we do.
Any comments for the company representative? Looking at your facility already on Northridge, you have planned expansion there, and this is quite a significant additional square footage that you're building, and great to see, great corporate citizen. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, if there's no other questions, Tricia.
I just wanted to address the phasing thing, just so that there's no confusion there. By no means does the phase 2 obligate anyone to build anything. We just we're referencing this end of things when it comes to landscaping and lighting and, I mean, the main thing is landscaping. You're kind of off the hook for, installing plantings along the whole frontage of, Northridge Drive. And so with that, we're referencing phase 1. You're on the hook for phase 1. And if you do end up developing the other end of the site, then you'll be on the hook for installing landscaping for phase 2. We just want to be able to reference it in our reports and conditions.
Understood, thank you, and we'll notate that on our plan.
Okay.
Okay, with that, do I hear a motion to open the public hearing?
Make motion?
Motion by Steve, supported by Joe to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and state a concern, comment concerning the project?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Supported by, proposed by Pat, supported by Scott to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. What's your pleasure? All right.
Shall revise sheet C2, include phase 1 and phase 2 notes, as well as the line that separates the two phases prior to issuance of building permit. The applicant shall revise sheet C4, replace the door screws, two screws, and also replace bracket there with an alternative ornamental tree appropriate to walk-ins hardness. So the applicant shall provide acceptable signage, dimensional details, to be reviewed by the staff prior to issuance of building permit. The applicant shall revise sheet C2 to include notes referencing fiber or page numbers associated with recorded easements shown on the plan prior to the issuance of building permit. It shall be acknowledged that the building permit for this project can be issued after the City of Walker's public road acceptance Northridge Drive. The applicant shall address items noted to the city engineer's report dated 10/20/20 site plan findings of fact in section 94-219B and 94-2136 and 7. The northeast IPUD as detailed on the final area site plan continues to meet the standards contained in subsection 3G regarding FASP content and does not meet any, and does meet any of the other applicable standards for review. The final area site plan is in substantial compliance with previously approved FASP consisting of the maps and company written materials required in subsection 2 of section 94-213. The final area site plan complies with the use permitted by the Northridge East IPUD in any prohibitions of specific uses by the Planning Commission pursuant to section 94-2133J. Appropriate service by public water and sewage utilities, public roads, and other essential services will be available for immediate use of occupants of Lot 4. Lot 4 will direct access to public electric or arterial street. All future uses of Lot 4 will be designed, constructed, and operated to comply with the performance standards as provided by Article 15 of the Walker zoning ordinance. Loading docks and trucking moving areas will be designed and located as to not to adversely affect adjacent and neighboring land or uses due to noise, odor, light, or other external effect. Except as otherwise expressly approved by the Planning Commission, all permitted principal uses on Lot 4 must be conducted within a completely enclosed building except for loading and unloading operations, on-site parking of vehicles, and the reusable stored materials and products which are related to the principal use of Lot 4 as shown on the final area site plan.
Thank you, Mark. And we have support?
Support.
Support by Pat. Any
Yeah, you guys do a good job. I can't help but be impressed. You're working with a builder that's done it before and worked with us, and we're not the biggest community in the world. People don't really know where we are, but we've got a lot of neat land, and I think it's been well handled, developed by people long before me to go out to that industrial site and the beauty and the grass and the trees out there. And and you talk about bringing in the people from China and Korea and showing your company. So yes, I'm very much in favor of this. You've done a good job, and so has the staff with this. Yes, I move for it, yes.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments? We'll call the question, the motion to question. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next hearing, well, wait, this is not a hearing. This is a site plan review for 3116 North Wilson Court, Northwest. The 45,000 plus addition to existing industrial building for West Pharma. Cheryl Scales is here representing Progressive AE and the applicant. Tricia, as planning director, would you please introduce the project?
So at your October 7th Planning Commission meeting, you considered site plan approval for this project, and it was tabled because of some discrepancies with the floor areas, and there was kind of some last minute changes, and so procedurally, we had some question as to how we were going to go about being able to approve the plan, because the change was that was being proposed was less development than what the original plan was. So to clear up all the confusion, the Planning Commission decided to table it and ask for the applicant to clarify everything with those items that I just mentioned. And so they are back with a much refined site plan. And so just an overview of the request and the property again. This time it's to review the site plan for a proposed 48,055 square foot addition to the existing building and related site improvements for West Pharma, and to provide an approval with or without conditions, denial, or tabling of the request. This property is located at 3116 North Wilson Court, and it's within the North Wilson Commerce Park. The future land use designation in the master plan for this parcel is industrial, both in 2007 and in 2020. The lot size is 9.6 acres. The zoning is MP, which is industrial park. And again, we've got Cheryl Scales of Progressive AE on behalf of the owner of West Pharma. So again, here is the general location. We're surrounded by other industrially zoned parcels here, and then this piece right here is the rest area that's along the highway here. And I don't know about you guys, but I can never remember if this is 96 or I-96, but you know what I'm talking about. And then I'm just going to give you guys a couple of, this is the same little background piece from West Pharma. I think it's important to point out that they're global manufacturing. They're in the global manufacturing, design, and production of integrated containment and delivery systems for injectable medicines. And the Walker site itself employs 275 people, and operations are happening 24/7. And the addition would be adding 60 additional jobs. And I'll say this again because I think it's really important. The Walker site played an integral role in the manufacturing components for the COVID-19 diagnostic testing kits. I'm sure they're staying busy with that. And so just to go through some of the highlights from my report, a summary of the improvements. They're proposing a 48,055 square foot building to house a clean room. They're adding 28 additional parking spaces, and they plan to restripe the existing spaces to comply with the zoning requirements per the parking section of the zoning ordinance. They're adding some site landscaping along the frontage of the site. And they're also adding a 763 square foot COVID entry vestibule. They're adding new mechanical equipment and additional landscaping, that's in there twice. Additional pole and wall pack lighting for the site. And so with this most recent submittal, they've addressed almost all of the items that were in the conditional recommendations from last time around, from October 7th. And they've also clarified what changes that they've made. And just want to point out here that they've removed the truck docks from this northwest side of the building. And then they've designated this driveway here along the northwest side of the site. It was proposed as a 26-foot wide drive and parking area, and it's now proposed as a 20-foot wide paved fire lane, and then there will be no parking on this end of that drive. But the drive will be used to load equipment occasionally and controlled as a fire lane. And so obviously they've updated, they've clarified that they plan on restriping the parking lot to comply, because before that was a question as to whether or not they were just restriping it, or if because some of the dimensions of the stall depths, widths, and the aisle widths were, didn't jive with what the current code requires. And so they've clarified that they do intend to restripe to comply with the code. And so they have also provided us with lighting and photometrics that are all for both the existing and the proposed areas on the site for the new lighting and the existing lighting. And so one item that they are still asking for is for the 5-foot buffer zone planting requirements to be waived, and also for the parking lot landscape island requirements. So just again, want to bring to your attention that this is an existing site. And if you drive out there, you would notice that adding some parking lot landscaped islands would be some retroactive landscape islands would not be all that reasonable in this instance. And so the applicant has also stated some reasons for some heightened FDA regulations with what they do. And so they believe that having more vegetation there might bring more insects and animals and, habitat for those guys. So they'd kind of like to just stay away from inviting some of that onto their site because of the nature of their business. And staff supports that request. And so I've added a condition that if the planning commission is also in support of this, that they waive that those two requirements. So again, the lighting, these were the items that were needed from the last time around, and the new plan addresses all the lighting items. They've addressed the parking lot clarification. They plan to restripe in accordance with the code. I think one of the biggest things on this site that the applicant has been working diligently with our city engineer to figure out how to account for the additional impervious with the existing stormwater infrastructure that's there as part of that plat, the North Wilson Commerce Park. So Scott's going to elaborate a lot more on that. I just wanted to point that out there, that this is, everything else is pretty minor. This is the only thing that that they've got to work on a little bit further. And then so I've got a recommendation here with two conditions of approval. And the first one is that the Planning Commission waive the requirements for the landscape parking islands and the 5-foot landscape buffer requirements along the northeast and west property lines, and approve the landscape plan as proposed. And then number 2, the applicant shall work with the engineering department to address the items noted in the city engineer's report dated October 13, 2020. And before the meeting, Cheryl Scales from Progressive, who is representing the owner, brought to my attention a typo in the legal description that's on the plan. So I'd just like to add one more condition of approval to that the typos in the legal description are corrected.
Thank you, Tricia. Any comments or questions for Tricia at this point? Okay, I'm going to turn the floor over to Scott Connors, our city engineer.
So our report from engineering is actually based on our 29th of December report, or I'm sorry, September report, and then we just updated it so that you didn't lose track of comments from last time. I think that makes it a little bit easier from us. So there's really 3 comments there. The first one is related to the curb and sidewalk on the west and north part of the site. We needed some additional information and width there. The sidewalk has simply been eliminated, so that kind of goes away with their updated site plan. The next item was related to the storm sewer sizing, and we had some concerns there. And unfortunately, those concerns turned out to be true, and there were some inadequacies and deficiencies in the storm sewer. But the applicant has been working to try to fix that, and as late as yesterday, I saw a draft report that looks like it's going to be acceptable, so I don't think we need to get into those details. They still need to clean that up and seal it and do some things, but that looks like something they can work out as part of their stormwater permit. And then the last item was related to how close the development is to the adjacent property lines. That's really more just to kind of highlight the point so that we don't have a neighbor coming back to us later saying, how could you allow them to, build and fill right up to their property line? And in this case, they've agreed that they'll get grading easements from those neighbors. So that's one of those things I think should be duly noted. And that's it for engineering.
Okay, any comments, questions for Scott? All right, thank you. And Ms. Scales, please.
Back for one of my few evening out adventures, which seems to be coming to Walker Planning Commission, so happy to be back. Wanted to thank you again for working with us on this. Our project is going at the speed of light, so I apologize for us not having all those details in order, but this is a quite exciting contract that we have, and we really need to get moving on it, so we pushed things ahead as fast as we could, and really appreciate your staff working with us to be able to do that. I'm going to go ahead and let West Pharma tell you a little bit about what they're up to. Trish did a real good job addressing all the changes that we have on there, so we'll let that stand, and then if you have any specific questions about anything, what's in the building, how we're operating, what we're up to, we'll take those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Brian Minus. I'm the site director for the Walker facility here. Thank you, Tricia, for the good overview of who we are and what we do. We moved into the current location back in 2007. We were previously located right downtown Grand Rapids, but due to growth, we needed a bigger site. And we picked this site partly to get to right where we are today, where we're growing again. So this site gave us what we needed for the contract that we had won back in 2007, with the potential for future growth down the road. So it's taken us 13, 14 years to get there, but we are super excited that we're there. As Tricia had mentioned, West is a world leader in containment and delivery devices for injectable medicines. West as a whole, the Walker site here is one of 25 manufacturing facilities around the world. We are, as a company, very involved in the fight against COVID. We're investing around the globe on the vaccination efforts that are going on. And then here at the Walker site, as mentioned, we are very heavily involved in the rapid diagnostic portion of the 5-minute test for detection of the COVID-19 virus. So this program that we've won is moving at a very, very rapid pace. So there is some urgency from our side to get through this. We're expected to have a facility up and operational by July of next year, which is a very short timeline. And that's where equipment and molds start to come in to support this new project. So we're expecting to be into pilot production September timeframe of next year, with full launch in Q1 of 2022. So timing is tight, but really excited. Happy to be able to add more jobs and continue the growth and the success that we've had at this facility. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the project team? All right. This isn't a public hearing, but if there's anybody out there that has any comments on this? Okay. It looks looks like they've checked all the boxes in terms of the items that we discussed at the last meeting.
Ready for a motion?
Yes.
Perfect. I will make a motion to approve site plan approval for the proposed 48,055 square foot building addition, 763 square foot entry vestibule, and related site improvements to parking, lighting, landscaping, and stormwater management for West Pharma, located at 3116 North Wilson Court Northwest, per the plans with a last revision date of 10/12/2020, subject to the following conditions. The Planning Commission waives the requirement for landscape parking islands and the 5-foot landscape buffer requirement along the northeast and west property lines, and approves the landscape plan as proposed. The applicant shall work with the engineering department to address the items noted in the city engineer's report dated 10/13/2020. And I think that it should be it.
There's the one, fix the typos of legal description of property, so that they're corrected. That's what Tricia wanted. That's one of the last,
Got it. I'm looking at the online packet, so I'm missing it.
Okay.
was
You're-
that stated properly?
Yeah, we just had a typo in the legal description, and then we just wanted to add that last condition that the typo be fixed.
Got it.
And you're agreeable to that?
Yes, consider it added.
Okay. Motion by Steve, supported by Pat, to approve the project as it's described. Any other comments or questions?
I make a comment, grumpy old man again. If efficient snow removal is a reason to get rid of the curved islands, landscaped islands, then we have to remove it from the ordinance because it applies to every other parking lot in the city. Having said my grumpy old man comment, I'm ready to vote.
If I could offer a comment on that, I think what to me was compelling is the type of manufacturing process they have, the expanded clean room, and I think there's some merit to their concerns as far as limiting the additional landscaping on the site. At least from my standpoint, I thought that was
I'm not arguing about landscaping, I'm just that efficient snow removal is the stretch. So, that should apply to every parking lot in the city, if we're worried about slip and fall. Just my grumpy old man.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other comments? We'll call the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, last item on the agenda, proposed recommendation to the city commission, proposed ordinance amendments regarding local food vendors, chapter 22, and before the Walker Code of Ordinances. We saw a version of this at the last meeting. Amendments have been introduced, and Tricia, you could take the floor.
It's kind of like Groundhog's Day.
Tyler's not here, so we'll go fast.
So at our last planning commission meeting, we had some ordinance amendments related to the mobile food vending, in the temporary use section of the ordinance, and then also the, part of the regulatory ordinance, chapter 22. And so, just to get you up to speed with where we're at now, so going back to the very beginning, we had these mobile food vendors who were trying to operate in the city of Walker. They found they had to get they were considered solicitors, and so we had the ordinance committee meeting so that we could get input from the ordinance committee. To revise or amend our ordinances to remove them as solicitors, and then the idea was to add them as a business. So direction given to staff to draft some ordinances that reflect the recommendation of the ordinance committee. We did that. Then we had another ordinance committee on September 28th, where it was discussed that we shouldn't have mobile food vendors as a business either. And then fast forward to October 7th, where we had the discussion of should they be a business, should they not be a business, and it was the consensus from the Planning Commission that these mobile food vendors should in fact be considered a business for any type of recourse or accountability with their business operating in the city of Walker. And so here we are, October 21st. There's a typo there. And we're at the Planning Commission meeting so that you can forward a recommendation to the City Commission on the final adoption of these proposed amendments. So the only change that I had to make was I went back to the ordinances that I had originally drafted and brought to the September 28th Ordinance Committee meeting. And so so mobile food vendors were removed as being required to register with the clerk's department as solicitors. And then I added back in that they should, that they will have to register as a business per chapter 22. And then I've taken some of the, I left it with some of the items that were required as part of the application through the clerk's department. And I added those requirements into the temporary use requirements. So the goal is to make it easier for these folks to apply for the temporary use permit, but they also had to get the business license. And so most of the application requirements are with the temporary use permit through the community development department. And then again, we cleaned up some areas in the temporary use section that referenced building official, changed it to zoning administrator. We also added eggs while we were at it as an item that could be sold at a roadside stand if it's in conjunction with an approved backyard chicken permit. And we've added mobile food vending permissions to vacant lots, zone public, semi-public. And we've also added that mobile food vending can be located on private or public property. So unless anyone has any discussion or further recommendation or direction to make any changes to these ordinances, I would recommend that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to the City Commission for the approval of the ordinance amendments. And I should also point out that the Planning Commission has jurisdiction only over Chapter 94. But since these two parts of the ordinance, so Chapter 22 is part of the regulatory or general code, and 94 is the zoning code. Planning Commission has jurisdiction over the zoning ordinance, but not the regulatory code. But they're tied together in so many ways that it's important to keep your recommendation tied to Chapter 22. So really, the Planning Commission is forwarding a recommendation for 94, and then they'll approve changes to Chapter 22. But we're doing it all in one shot.
So I just wanted to make a comment, I guess. So I feel like at the prior meeting, the direction I was feeling was that we wanted to more lump the mobile food vending license in the style that we do like snowplow licensing, which is, I thought, a different process. That said, I don't really have any stake in it. I think the developing a mobile food vending license separately would be a longer process anyways, and something we'll have to do as another step anyways. So I don't mind going this direction at this point, but just something I wanted to bring up that we had kind of, I feel like, discussed going that direction where it would be like its own entity in the structure of licensing locally. So,
and that is reflected in the minutes, and I think I mentioned that in my memo. So I guess it would be up to the clerk's department to kind of tailor an application that's just for mobile food vending and only really gather the information that they're going to need to, that would be of use to them.
Right.
And pretty much everything else will be handled under the temporary use.
So I guess my question is, so in the structure of our ordinance, is like snow plowing and like garbage disposal noted separately I guess, are we following the same structure with what we're putting into place right now?
Yeah, so if they were to have a separate license designation, then it probably would be advisable to have a whole section on mobile food vending.
Okay. Like I said, at this point, I think we probably move forward with what we've got, because that'll be a more of a process, and it'll probably have to come back around. But
Yeah.
just, I guess, food for thought and something to put on the radar screen moving forward.
I can pull it up right now and see what it says. I thought there were specific license types for, there's Article 1, which is all of the general requirements for businesses, and then they're broken down into these different types of businesses. And so they have this secondhand goods license, which is, I've never heard of this before, but I get these applications every once in a while and I'm like, what is this? Why does it come in this special interoffice or interdepartment mail folder? And so it looks like we've got some specialized businesses that have different requirements. So yeah, I guess it would be up to the clerk's department to decide how they want to handle it. And if it's good enough to just have them register as a general business, then that's probably okay. But if they want to have any specific additional information added that's on top of what the general business license requires, then that would be up to them to kind of propose those changes. But I think they might be able to get away with just doing just the general business license, just like any brick and mortar, retail store, any other restaurant.
Well, that's kind of what we had talked about too at the ordinance level, was like the lack of physical location to tie an address to for like a food truck, which like within city limits at least. So that, but beside the point, I think this is fine, but yeah, just wheels turning.
Well, that's what we were just talking about.
I would think it would be alphabetically, it would be right in there someplace, but I don't see snow. Could it be under Article 1? Is there snow plowing there? I thought that was the question last time, do we require snowplow licenses? I don't think Walker does, Grand Rapids does, but I don't see anything here that.
We talked about that at the ordinance committee meeting where they had Jessica, the deputy clerk, mentioned all the other different types of licenses.
Yeah, I guess in that instance, it was just an example. It seems that there are like other specific business licenses to different things, but.
Separate license requirements. Yeah, so if the clerk's department wants to add any additional,
Yeah, that's their job to come back around if they want to do that.
but I think the goal is to sort of make it easier for them to. So again, I feel like the general business license would cover the intent of what we're trying to achieve here. We just want to have some contact information. Who owns the business? What's their headquarters or their base or whatever? And then, we're asking for the certificate of liability insurance with the temporary use permit. So that all rolled into one, I think would cover all of our bases with what the city would like to see with this.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've got a recommendation. Any other comments, discussion? Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we send it to the city commission. Support.
Second.
Motion by Tom, supported by Scott and Joe. Unless there's any other conversation, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. I think that's the end of the agenda. Is there anything else to discuss at this point?
I can probably just add that we're kind of slowing down just a little bit. So we currently so tonight we were actually supposed to have a tentative preliminary plat approval on the agenda, but there were some issues with the lot layout and the ownership, dedication of the stormwater detention area. So they had a little bit more work to do, and so they should be on our November 4th agenda. But outside of that, I haven't received any other applications. So we had a deadline of October 14th for applications for the second meeting in November. So we're looking, if anybody applies for anything, it will be, our next meeting after November 4 will be December 2.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Is German Auto finally building over there in front of Alaska?
I believe so.
Made a big mess, but there's no signs in where it is.
Oh,
What's going on across the street? I can't remember.
that's the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
I'm getting old time disease, but I can't remember that.
I've got a list like this long of, potential development projects, but, I don't have any applications yet. One thing I will say, and this, you might be interested in knowing about this, I got an email from the folks who are handling that Lincoln Lawns project. And they want to do a remote meeting instead of like an in-person meeting. And at this point, we're just like, just go for it. And so what they propose to do is send out a mailer to all the people within 300 feet. So we provided them with the address labels for all the neighboring owner or property owners. And so they plan on sending out a thing saying, send us an email, and then they'll send you an email with like the Zoom link or the Zoom instructions. And I said, why don't you just put the Zoom instructions on the mailer? That might cut out a few steps. But, so I think that's what they're gonna do. I said, just keep us in the loop and let us know when you plan on holding the meeting so that, if people are asking, we have some information.
All right. That's good to hear.
If anybody on the commission wants to be involved with this, because I know Tyler wants to, I'll let you guys know when I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Approved. Thank you.